Right, here we've got the plan of the room that we're going to put the laminate floor down on. Normally 3 metres by 3 metres, but of course it's slightly over, and we've got to really plan the width of the room, this width here, because we're not going to get an even number of boards with a nice wide board at the far side if we start with a full board on this side. So we're going to have to rip a board down the middle, and that's where the 10% starts to come in. So this is the room physically. Let me go down to the doorway, and on the floor there I've just set out a few boards to make sure that we have a suitable line. It's nice and parallel along the side of the wardrobe there, and the bit at the door here is not going to run off and create a tremendous gap, because I'm going to use a very tiny gap there and a thin strip of aluminium, I'll show you that later, as the nice covering piece. And the gap here is going to be fairly narrow, and I'll fill that in, as I'll show you later, with sealant. And then round the edges I'm going to be using about 6mm gap for expansion. I don't know whether that's going to be expanding that much, but it does have quite a load on it, and we don't want this thing to shift. So the first thing I'm going to do is rip 3 boards, unfortunately, in half. So I've got to rip that one, and there'll be a little bit at the end there that I'll have to rip. That will be repeated on the other side, so there's going to be basically 3 boards that are going to be wasted. I'll do the calculations very quickly for you. 16 boards would, if they were 20 centimetres wide or 200mm, 16 boards would be 3,200. Now that would fit in there nicely. Unfortunately, 16 boards by 195, which is their nominal width, comes out to be 3,120. And so 3,120 is going to be just short by 3 centimetres at that end, 30mm. So I don't want a 3 centimetre piece all the way down there. I don't mind it in there. So that means we have to cut a board and make it a bit wider, and therefore have something on this side which is a bit smaller than one whole board. And we'll work that out as we go along. I've got the 3 bits ripped down the middle, 120 centimetres, so 2 of them laid as they're clipped together there, just out from the wall, because I've got to put a notch in there to make sure that this comes out. Here we go. So I've got those lined up. Down at that other end there's the spacers, and I shall use my rule here. I'm going to be using about 6mm spacing, and here there will be some scotia around the wainscoting there, so that's going to be about 6mm there. So I'm going to cut that at about that distance, about there, just a little bit like that, there. And I'm doing this with the jigsaw, and I want that, hopefully, it doesn't really matter whether it runs off or runs out a little bit, because that's going to be 10mm or 6mm out here from the scotia, underneath the scotia. Now I replaced that board against the wardrobe edge there, and checked that distance out, a level there, and with the spacer pieces in. I thought that was a better way to finish that off. Now, I'm not a professional, I'm not doing this every day, so I'm just being a bit pedantic here. Well, I want it to look nice, don't I? So what I'm doing now is just transferring that measurement for that little bit to cut out onto the back. Then we don't rip the laminate on the other side. Again, I'm being a bit pedantic, but then it's my job. I want it to be right. So transfer this to the back. Again, this doesn't have to be super accurate because it's going under the scotia. We hope. I never can tell, can you? These things get changed along the way. But I'll be using a 2 centimetre quarter round scotia, so that should be okay. And I'll check that measurement again. Measure twice, cut once. I still make mistakes. And then my jigsaw on here, making sure I don't hit the blade on anything underneath. And I like to have all my work clamped. Most of the time clamped. And voila, no chips. Well, minimal chips. So that slots into place. And then the scotia will cover quite nicely. Now what I'm going to do is do a clean up, get rid of any bits and pieces, there's lots of dust, and then I'll sort that out in the corner. Little piece finished in the corner there, so that's all looks nicely set out. And what I've done here is cut a whole board in half, so that I've got boards are not lining up. You need about 400mm between joints. So then I've just checked this board fits into here. I'm not going to lock it all in just yet. That board fits in there, and then I'll need this board cutting here as it places against there. And the way that will be done is the board is put into position, but you turn it round so that the other, then you want it in the right sort of position, the right sort of spacing, and you mark off on here where you want the length of the board. And when you turn this board round, the cut edge there is the one that goes up against the that side, which normally would be undercut scotia, but this is going to be against that aluminium piece that I'm going to put in there. But of course I'm going to do the cleaning, and then you might be saying, now what about the waterproof underlay? That's going down next. Now I've just got all this little bit set out. So cleaning up job, and then set out the underlay. Laying the underlay according to manufacturer's instructions, 50mm, sticking up the side with the big floppy bit here towards the centre of the room. I'll just trim this so that we've got a corner to into that way, and then draw this out. Fitting that board into there. This is where you need some weight on that board so that it does clip down and it buckles up. Yeah, that's been fun. And then the next board, move along. Get that lined up. Clip that down. Got a gap here. We'll try and make that small. It's not clipped in fully. So this is the technique here. Get your tapping block, piece of wood, whatever you've got. I bought a little kit for $20. So that goes there. Make sure you've got hold of it. With a bit of tapping and tamping, I've started the third row here with a full board. It's all locking into place. The back bit there is sitting down alright. But I think that's the narrow part there may spring open at some stage, but we should be able to lever that out later. And I'll get to cutting that board at the end. Ready to fit in the other piece on the left hand side. Because what you cut from that end, you use at the start of the next row. Well, that's a theory. It's got to go into there, but we measure it off by turning the board round, putting that into place, up against there. Now I want that little space up there because we have this piece of aluminium that goes in there. Right, piece of aluminium that I'm going to put into this place here, actually goes on that way, covers the gap. I'm just going to use that way around so we'll see what I'm doing. Just there. The setup I have here on my saw table, saving me from getting a drop saw. I've got a saw guide here, put the board, rest the end of the board on the table over here so it doesn't flap down, and I slide that out to where I want to cut. Move the table up so it's supporting the board, and then I put in another saw guide here that'll take me up to that line, and that's where the laser line will show on the circular saw. I clamp this down with these bolts at the end, and then set up the saw so the laser line on the saw comes along here, along the cut line. Here's my first mark, and that's my 1.5 millimeters. So I'll get a square, draw across to where I want the edge of the saw cut to be. Of course, that's the problem with the saw, it has quite a wide cut. So it's no use just going to the laser line. Then I position my saw spacer and adjust the board roughly. This is all to save getting a drop saw, but it's easy for me, it works for me, and that's what it's all about. So there's the laser line, that's my saw spacer. I've got the saw spacer lining up with the line that I want the blade to cut. Now this is giving me slightly more than that, which I don't mind, because if I've made too long a piece of board here, I can always tap that back later on, because I've got adjustment at the other end. So here we go. First cut of the day is the deepest. I've got my trusty mask on today, and I can hear the professionals saying, "Oh, get on with it, they'd have finished it by now." Well, fine, this is me. Lined up. Now look at that, perfect fit. One that I didn't want particularly, I wanted a nice gap there, so I can adjust the saw cut width, but I've also now got to fit in this shape here, so I'm going to measure that out and then cut this out and then cut myself a little bit of space so I can put my spacer piece in there, like that, because I don't want to start hammering this down this way, so I'll get on to putting that in. On this side I've got the architrave for the door, which is metal. I've left that in, but on the other side I've cut it out with a angle grinder so that the board, where you see it mostly coming in the door, the board can go underneath the architrave. Fitted, spaced, I think that'll do fine. We can get the aluminium piece in there nicely. Voila, again. Now we're on to the next stage of putting the next line of underfelt on. Just a tricky little job, getting the tape off and getting this sticky stuff sticking onto that flappy bit of aluminium. And the other trick that I found from the internet was, once you get enough space, put your new boards and the packages on the board you've laid with a bit of weight. The last board in the doorway finished just a little bit underneath the architrave here, and that's where the aluminium piece goes in to finish that off. And this bit here will have filler, and the architrave sits on that. Now it's just a straight run, lots of straight runs to the end, so the offcut from that last board by the door fits into here, and here you should be able to slot in, press down, the next one, come along, slot in, line up, press down, and I'll tap those gaps in, and then move on to the last one, taking me back up to the side of the door. And that'll need to be trimmed, so that gets turned around up to the spaces. A couple of spaces in there, right gap. Measure to there, cut, that turns round into there, that piece might go down there. I might use a full one to start there. We tamp everything into place. Narrow siding. Pull this last gap in here with this in tool, weight on. Space is just right. I think my circular sawing's getting better. Last board in at the window. I cut it to this length here because a full board just fits up to the window very nicely, but this is the gap that I have to do the ripping of a board, and when you have a look at that gap you might see that it actually is not square, it's not a nice rectangle. I know the reason for that. When the house was being built, this wall was set at this angle right the way across, and you can see how that's coming away there. That was how the wall was going to go up to the doorway for the other bedroom. The site manager made them take it down, but obviously they didn't take this corner away here and reposition it. What I've got on the floor here now is the board I'm going to rip, set out exactly in place of the board underneath, and then I'm going to use this board on the top here and mark off on here the changes in direction along the board, and then this will fit into the space nicely. That's the theory. Let's have a go. I'm going to use a small piece of board, be a little bit easy to handle. So the line is there. Down here. Here. And then it starts to change direction here. So I'll keep that little board next to the wall. And that should have it marked. Oh, my pencil where it works. Now my pencil's got blunt. There we go. There. So that tapers in there. Quite pleased with that. It's amazing. Metal strip in place and the beginnings of the scotia, and that's ready to join onto another piece because we don't know how many bookcases are going in here because this is not a bedroom, it is a sewing room. And a bit of stone coloured Sikaflex or something in there, silicone, and that just finishes that off nicely.